Today we are going to look at these people were eaten alive during cage diving. From a fierce tiger shark attack off the coast of Hawaii to a great white breaching a cage and leaving a diver dead within minutes. It was October 15, 2016, in Guadalupe Island, Mexico. Far out in the Pacific, 150 miles southwest of Ensenada, the volcanic cliffs of Guadalupe Island rose abruptly from the sea. The island's barren slopes, streaked with shades of red and gray, were a stark contrast to the endless blue around them. Below the surface, the waters were famous, not just for their clarity, but for the great white sharks that gathered here every year. That morning, the ocean was calm, its surface smooth under a pale early sun. The water temperature hovered at 68 degrees Fahrenheit, with visibility stretching nearly 100 feet. For divers and thrill seekers, it was perfect. Several commercial dive boats floated at anchor in the island's sheltered northeastern bay, their decks buzzing with preparation as cages were lowered into the water. Among those aboard the Pacific Hunter was Marcus Chen, a 34-year-old marine biology professor from San Diego. His fascination with apex predators had shaped his career. Years of research papers, countless hours tagging and tracking sharks, but all from the surface. This trip was different. It was a chance to stand just feet away from the animal that had defined much of his professional life. Marcus had been saving for this expedition for 2 years. His wife, Sarah, wasn't thrilled about it, but he'd reassured her that Guadalupe's safety record was flawless. The cages were built to withstand the force of even the largest sharks, and no diver had ever been seriously injured here. The Pacific Hunter left port at 5:30 a.m., carrying 12 passengers and 6 crew members. As the boat closed in on the island, Marcus stood at the bow, watching the jagged cliffs grow taller. By 8:15 a.m., they were anchored in 120 feet of water. Crew members lowered 2 aluminum shark cages into place and began preparing chum, fish oil, blood, and scraps to draw the predators in. Within half an hour, the first dorsal fin sliced the surface. Great white sharks are among the ocean's most efficient hunters. Adults can exceed 20 feet in length and weigh more than 5,000 pounds. They can accelerate to 35 miles per hour in short bursts, propelled by powerful tail fins, and their bite force is measured at over 18,000 pounds per square inch, enough to crush bone with ease. Guadalupe Island's dense seal population made it one of the most reliable places in the world to see them, and during peak season, several individuals could be spotted in a single day. Later that morning, Marcus stepped into the cage for his second dive of the day. The structure measured 8 feet long, 6 feet wide, and 7 feet tall, suspended off the stern of the boat. The bars were spaced at 12 inches, small enough to keep a shark's head out, or so the design intended. 3 other divers joined Marcus. They wore wetsuits, masks, and surface-supplied air hoses. From the port side, a massive shape emerged, an 18-foot female great white. Her size, scars, and notched dorsal fin identified her instantly to the crew. Deep Blue, one of the most well-known sharks in these waters. She circled once, slow and deliberate, then dropped out of sight beneath the cage. Seconds later, she came back, this time in a full-speed vertical strike. Her snout slammed into the lower corner of the cage with a hollow metallic crack. The impact bent one of the vertical bars outward, just enough to create an opening wider than intended. The jolt threw Marcus against the opposite wall. Deep Blue's head pressed into the gap. Her jaws opened wide, rows of serrated teeth flashing in the filtered sunlight. She lunged, biting Marcus across the left side of his torso. The pressure crushed multiple ribs instantly and punctured his lung, while her teeth tore deep into muscle. A cloud of blood blossomed in the water. The force dragged Marcus partly out of the cage. The other divers flattened themselves against the far wall, their view a blur of thrashing tail and white belly. Deep Blue shook her head violently, working to pull him free. Her jaws released briefly before clamping down again, this time on his upper arm. The bite fractured his humerus and shredded the shoulder joint. The movement spun Marcus sideways, his body now almost entirely outside the cage. With one final surge backward, the bent bar gave way enough for the shark to pull clear. She descended to about 30 feet, Marcus still in her jaws. Down there, she delivered a final bite to his head and neck. The crushing force severed his cervical vertebrae. His body went limp, slipping from her grip and drifting downward. On the surface, crew members had already called for emergency divers. 2 entered the water within moments, descending into a clouded mix of blood and disturbed silt. They reached Marcus in less than a minute, carefully lifting him back to the surface while keeping watch for the shark's return. He was pulled onto the dive platform, and he was pronounced dead on board. Mexican maritime authorities inspected the cage and determined that metal fatigue in the corner joint had weakened the frame. The blow from Deep Blue had been enough to bend the bar outward. New regulations were introduced soon after: reinforced corner construction, reduced bar spacing, and mandatory pre-dive inspections for all commercial operators. Marcus's family later set up a small marine conservation fund in his name, reflecting the passion that had drawn him to Guadalupe Island. His death became a sobering reminder that even with the best precautions, the ocean's apex predator could still find its way through. It was May 28, 2014, off the north shore of Oahu, Hawaii. 10 minutes out from Haleiwa Harbor, the tour boat idled beyond the reef line, where the deep blue Pacific rose and fell in long, even swells. Trade winds brushed the surface into a glassy chop, and the sun burned through scattered clouds, turning the water a clear cobalt. Below, the seafloor dropped quickly from pale sand to dark blue water, with bait schools flickering like mercury beneath the hull. The water temperature hovered near 77 degrees Fahrenheit, and visibility extended more than 70 feet, ideal conditions for spotting approaching predators. To the west, a thin line of whitewater marked breaking surf over the outer reef. To the east, the green spine of the Ko'olau Range faded into haze. A chum slick feathered off the stern, drifting down current and out into deeper water. Rebecca Becky Lawson, 36, had flown in from Seattle to finish a month-long feature on adventure travel across the islands. A certified scuba diver and confident swimmer, she'd never been face-to-face with large predatory sharks. Shark cage diving, offered out of Haleiwa, was slated as the final entry on her bucket list, one last adventure before flying home. Just after sunrise, the boat left the harbor and headed into open water. The crew gave a safety briefing, explaining cage entry, hand placement, and camera use. The cage, inspected and secured to the transom, floated on sturdy pontoons. Becky suited up, checked her gear, and joined 2 other guests for the first rotation. Tiger sharks are among Hawaii's most common large predatory sharks. Females can exceed 14 feet and weigh more than 1,000 pounds. Their broad heads, keen electroreception, and slow, confident approach make them consummate investigators. Unlike great whites, which often ambush from depth then disengage, tiger sharks are notorious for close passes, repeated bump checks, and opportunistic bites on floating objects. Becky entered on the second rotation. The cage settled with its top frame just above the surface. She gripped the interior rail with her left hand, braced her fins against the lower crossbar. Small jacks and mackerel swirled in the slick. 5 minutes in, a shadow rose from the blue, a large female tiger shark, approximately 13 to 14 feet, moving with slow, deliberate strokes. She circled once, passed the stern, and glided along the cage's port side at arm's length, pectoral fins steady, tail sweeping in measured arcs. The crew kept the bait line outside the cage footprint, drawing the shark away on a controlled path. On the third pass, she altered her line, turning broadside, then angled in. Her snout touched the cage corner in a probing bump, producing a dull thud that echoed through the frame. The upper corner bracket flexed slightly. A hose clamp on the corner mesh shifted under load. The shark struck again, harder this time, rattling the corner stanchion. A palm-wide gap opened where the mesh met the bar, and water surged through. Becky tightened her grip as the cage rolled in the swell. The tiger shark came head-on, biting across the exposed seam of the cage. Her teeth clamped onto Becky's right forearm, tearing through neoprene and into flesh. Skin and muscle split under the pressure of the serrations. Blood streamed into the water in thin red threads. The shark pulled, testing. Becky's arm lodged against the inner crossbar, preventing a clean draw. The jaw released and rebit slightly higher on the forearm, deeper. A short shake followed, a lateral whip, tearing lacerations into parallel tracks. The cage pivoted on its hinge as swell lifted the transom. One of the crew dropped a weighted push-pull and drove it against the shark's head. The contact redirected her angle, forcing a partial disengagement. The tiger shark backed off, swept a low circle, then came again along the port side. This time she angled upward at the mid-frame. Her head rode over the lower bar, and her mouth closed around the cage rail itself, testing metal with a brief crush. The frame held. She let go, veered, and passed down current. Blood traced a faint ribbon off the stern. Becky's forearm bled steadily. The wetsuit sleeve peeled back to reveal deep punctures and torn tissue. A deckhand clipped a retrieval line to the cage, and the skipper powered forward to push the shark away. The crew winched the cage up and pulled Becky onto the deck. The crew applied a pressure dressing and packed the deepest wounds with hemostatic gauze while monitoring her vitals en route to Haleiwa. The shark appeared twice more behind the boat before vanishing into open water. At the harbor, EMS transferred Becky to Wahiawa General, then to a higher-level facility in Honolulu. Surgery cleaned and repaired the tendon damage, fixed a hairline radius fracture, and placed drains. She was discharged in a splint with a long course of antibiotics and months of hand therapy ahead. State boating officers documented the incident, noting the corner mesh had been secured with corroded hose clamps and inadequate backup. The operator replaced all corner mesh with welded stainless panels, added extra lashing, and updated safety briefings to keep arms well inside inner rails. North Shore operators stressed that tiger shark approaches are common, but injuries are rare with proper equipment and positioning. It was March 18, 2013, off the rugged coast of Gansby, South Africa, a place often called the Great White Capital of the world. The waters here were a shimmering turquoise on the surface, but beneath lay a different world, colder, darker, and ruled by one of the ocean's most efficient predators. The charter boat. Southern wind floated just beyond the kelp line, anchored in calm swells. The horizon stretched endlessly, but closer in, the sea was restless, stirred by currents that carried the scent of fish and seal colonies from nearby Dyer Island. The air smelled faintly of chum, a mix of fish oils and tuna heads, drifting from the bait box tied off the stern to draw in the day's main attraction. 35-year-old Olivia Hayes had flown in from Melbourne for her first solo holiday in years. A marketing consultant by trade, she'd spent months buried under deadlines and late nights before finally taking her friend's advice to book something wild, something unforgettable. Shark cage diving hadn't been part of the original plan. She signed up only after meeting a group of backpackers in Cape Town who swore it was the ultimate adrenaline rush. Olivia wasn't afraid of the ocean. She'd grown up swimming in Port Phillip Bay, but the thought of being face-to-face with a great white was another matter. Still, with the forecast promising calm seas and clear visibility, she decided it was now or never. The morning began with coffee on deck, followed by a briefing from the dive master. He outlined the cage's safety features, the importance of keeping hands and cameras inside the bars, and the procedures if a shark came in close. The message was clear. The predators were drawn to the bait, not the divers. But caution was non-negotiable. Olivia suited up in a thick wetsuit, the neoprene snug against her skin. The cage was bolted to the side of the boat, half submerged in the water. From above, it looked solid. Steel bars spaced just enough for a clear view, but tight enough to keep a shark's head from fitting through. She was in the second rotation, watching from the deck as two other divers slipped under the surface. Moments later, a shadow passed beneath them. A female great white, perhaps 14 feet long, circling with the slow, deliberate grace of a seasoned hunter. Great white sharks are the largest predatory fish on Earth, capable of speeds over 25 miles per hour and bites strong enough to crush a seal in seconds. In cage diving encounters, they often approach out of curiosity, testing their surroundings with quick bursts of speed or investigative bumps. While direct attacks on cages are rare, the combination of bait, noise, and human presence can sometimes trigger more aggressive behavior. By the time it was Olivia's turn, the great white had been joined by a slightly smaller male. The crew lowered her and 3 other divers into the cage. The cold water pressed in instantly, muffling sound except for the hiss of air bubbles. She gripped the inside bar, scanning the blue-green haze for movement. The female came first, gliding out of the gloom. Her eyes were black, unblinking, her body flexing in perfect arcs. Olivia watched, transfixed, as the shark passed within inches, the scars along her flank visible through the water. Then, without warning, the bait line snapped taut. The shark lunged, jaws opening wide, and in the chaos, one of the upper corner joints of the cage gave way with a metallic groan. The impact bent a section of the frame outward just enough for her snout to push through. Olivia felt a sudden burst of water as the shark's head broke the plane between them, her teeth clamping onto Olivia's left shoulder. The force slammed her backward into the opposite side of the cage. Pain radiated down her arm, hot and sharp, but she didn't have time to react before the shark thrashed, twisting the bent bars further. The dive master above was already yelling for a rapid haul-up. 2 crew members cranked the winch, but the cage rocked violently as the shark pulled sideways. The other divers kicked toward the far corner, giving Olivia as much space as possible. The shark released her shoulder but struck again, this time clamping onto her forearm. The pressure crushed muscle and bone. She felt the snap even through the adrenaline. Blood clouded the water, drawing the smaller male into a rapid pass just outside the cage. One crewman swung the bait pole hard against the shark's snout, forcing her to recoil just long enough for the winch to lift the cage halfway out of the water. The shark slid back into the depths, the bent corner of the cage hanging like a broken rib. On deck, the crew pulled Olivia out first. Her wetsuit was shredded across the left arm and shoulder, deep lacerations exposing muscle. Her forearm hung limp, fractured in 2 places. She was conscious but silent, her breathing ragged. A pressure bandage went on immediately while the captain radioed for a medevac. The boat sped back toward shore, every wave slamming the hull as the crew worked to keep her stable. She was airlifted to a Cape Town hospital where surgeons spent hours repairing torn muscles and setting fractures. The bite force had severed several tendons, and nerve damage meant months of rehabilitation ahead. South African maritime authorities later inspected the cage and confirmed that a corroded weld had weakened the joint that bent during the strike. The incident led to new safety checks and reinforced corners on all licensed shark diving cages in the region. Olivia eventually regained partial use of her arm, though the thick, pale ridges running from shoulder to wrist remained, a permanent reminder of the day she faced one of the ocean's most powerful predators and survived. In today's episode, we explore how these 5 people were eaten alive during cage diving expeditions, from a marine biologist testing his academic knowledge to a filmmaker seeking the perfect shot on an island. But first, a wildlife photographer's quest for award-winning footage at Seal Island leads to an encounter with nature's most perfect predator. It was August 15, 2014. when the waters surrounding Seal Island, South Africa, claimed another victim to the ocean's most feared predator. Located 8 kilometers southeast of Hout Bay, this rocky outcrop churned with anticipation as dawn broke over the South African coast. The island's jagged cliffs rose 30 meters above the Atlantic, while beneath the surface, the continental shelf dropped into depths exceeding 500 meters. Home to over 60,000 Cape Fur seals, these waters served as a prime hunting ground for apex predators. Olivia Chen, a 34-year-old freelance wildlife photographer from San Francisco, had arrived at this remote location with a single purpose. For 12 years, she had built her reputation capturing dangerous wildlife in their natural habitats, often pushing boundaries that made fellow photographers uncomfortable. Her portfolio included close encounters with Kodiak bears in Alaska and saltwater crocodiles in Australia, but great whites remained her ultimate challenge. Chen had spent 2 years planning this expedition, studying shark behavior patterns and feeding schedules around Seal Island. Peak season brought massive females to these waters, some exceeding 20 feet in length. She had chosen to work alone, believing that smaller groups attracted less attention from the predators. Her diving cage bobbed 30 meters from the island's eastern shore, where the seal colony's morning exodus would soon begin. The great white shark represents the ocean's most efficient predator, having evolved over 400 million years into a perfect killing machine. Adult females can reach lengths of 20 feet and weight exceeding 5,000 pounds. Their triangular, serrated teeth are designed to slice through flesh and bone with devastating efficiency. These apex predators possess electroreception capabilities, detecting the electrical fields generated by all living creatures, making escape nearly impossible once targeted. At 7:23 a.m., an 18-foot female great white emerged from the depths, her massive form cutting through the water with terrifying grace. The shark began circling Chen's cage in a methodical pattern, her black eyes fixed on the photographer inside. Chen recognized the aggressive posturing immediately. The arched back, lowered pectoral fins, and tight circling behavior indicated a highly agitated predator. Despite the obvious danger signals and every safety protocol screaming against it, Chen's obsession consumed her rational mind. The morning light filtered perfectly through the water, and the shark's massive size promised the career-defining footage she'd been desperately chasing. Her trembling hand moved toward the cage's emergency latch, a mechanism she'd been trained never to touch, except in life-threatening equipment failures. Just 30 seconds, she told herself. The same lie that had driven her to photograph avalanches and deadly storms. The metal door swung open with a soft click that seemed to echo through the water like a death knell. Chen extended her waterproof camera housing beyond the cage's protective bars, focusing on the approaching predator. The great white detected the movement instantly, her lateral line system registering the subtle water displacement. In a burst of explosive power, the shark accelerated directly toward the opening. The attack occurred with devastating precision. The great white's jaws, capable of exerting 4,000 psi, clamped down on Chen's torso just below her ribcage. The initial impact crushed her sternum and multiple ribs, the bone fragments puncturing both lungs simultaneously. The predator's powerful neck muscles engaged in a violent thrashing motion, designed to tear away large chunks of flesh from prey. Chen's body was pulled completely from the cage as the shark's serrated teeth sawed through muscle tissue and organs. Her wetsuit provided no protection against the razor-sharp dental array, which sliced through the neoprene-like paper. Blood erupted into the surrounding water as major arteries were severed. The shark's teeth had penetrated her liver, stomach, and left kidney, causing massive internal hemorrhaging. Chen's breathing apparatus was torn away during the initial attack, filling her damaged lungs with seawater. The combination of catastrophic blood loss, organ failure, and drowning proved fatal within 90 seconds of the initial bite. The great white released its grip and disappeared into the depths, leaving Chen's lifeless body floating near the surface. The cage operator, monitoring from the support vessel, immediately initiated emergency protocols and contacted maritime rescue services. South African authorities launched a comprehensive investigation into the incident, focusing on safety protocol violations and equipment modifications. The diving company faced intense scrutiny regarding its cage maintenance and emergency procedures. Chen's family released a brief statement acknowledging her passion for wildlife photography, while requesting privacy during their grief. The attack marked the third fatal great white encounter near Seal Island in 18 months, prompting renewed calls for enhanced safety regulations in the cage diving industry. Local authorities temporarily suspended commercial shark diving operations pending the investigation's completion. It was June 3, 2015, when the crystal-clear waters of Beka Lagoon in Fiji transformed from paradise into a nightmare. Located on the southern coast of Viti Levu, this pristine marine sanctuary stretched across 390 square kilometers of protected coral reefs and deep channels. The lagoon's unique geography, featuring dramatic drop-offs and tidal passages, had created the perfect ecosystem for apex predators to flourish in unprecedented numbers. Ethan Reynolds, a 28-year-old marine biology teacher from Perth, had chosen this remote destination to celebrate his honeymoon with wife Sarah, a certified rescue diver with over 200 logged dives. While Ethan possessed extensive diving experience, he had never attempted cage diving with sharks. His adventurous and curious personality drove him to seek first-hand encounters with the marine life he taught about in his classroom. The couple had specifically requested the most active shark site in the lagoon, despite repeated warnings from local operators about recent aggressive encounters. Ethan's fascination with predator behavior stemmed from his academic work studying shark migration patterns. He viewed this honeymoon dive as an opportunity to gather behavioral observations for his curriculum development. Sarah, equally passionate about marine conservation, supported her husband's research ambitions. The couple had spent months planning this expedition, researching the lagoon's reputation as one of the world's premier bull shark diving locations. Recent heavy rainfall had increased nutrient runoff into the lagoon, attracting larger numbers of prey fish and subsequently drawing more predators to the area. Local dive operators had reported unusual territorial behavior among resident bull sharks, with several incidents of cage contact in the preceding weeks. The water temperature of 82 degrees Fahrenheit created optimal conditions for shark activity. Bull sharks represent one of the ocean's most formidable and unpredictable predators. These apex hunters can reach lengths of 11 feet and weights exceeding 500 pounds, with their stocky, muscular build generating tremendous power through the water. Their unique physiology allows them to survive in both saltwater and freshwater environments, making them one of the few shark species capable of traveling far inland through river systems. Most critically, bull sharks possess the highest testosterone levels of any animal on Earth, fueling their notoriously aggressive temperament. Their bite force measures over 5,900 pounds per square inch, delivered through rows of broad, triangular teeth designed to grip and crush rather than slice. Unlike great whites that typically bite and release, bull sharks employ a death roll technique to disorient prey and tear away chunks of flesh. At 2:30 p.m., Ethan and Sarah descended into the aluminum cage suspended 20 feet below the surface. The rectangular enclosure measured 8 feet by 6 feet, with horizontal bars spaced 10 inches apart to prevent shark entry, while allowing clear viewing. The cage's design had been tested extensively, but recent incidents suggested some predators had learned to exploit structural weaknesses. Within minutes of reaching depth, a massive 10-foot male bull shark emerged from the murky depths. His scarred hide and distinctive blunt snout marked him as a mature, territorial male. The predator approached the cage with calculated precision, his small eyes fixed on the human occupants with predatory interest. Ethan, mesmerized by the shark's proximity and eager to observe its behavior patterns, made a fatal decision. Despite explicit safety warnings, he extended his right hand through the cage bars, attempting to touch the passing predator. The bull shark's response was instantaneous and devastating. The predator's massive jaws clamped down on Ethan's forearm with crushing force. His triangular teeth, each measuring over an inch in length, penetrated through the neoprene wetsuit and deep into the bone. The radius and ulna fractured under immense pressure as serrated edges severed muscle tissue, tendons, and major blood vessels. The bull shark immediately initiated his signature death roll, a feeding behavior designed to disorient prey and strip flesh from bone. Ethan's shoulder joint dislocated with an audible crack as the 400-pound predator twisted his powerful body in violent spirals. Sarah grabbed her husband's free arm, desperately attempting to pull him back into the cage's safety. The aluminum bars began bending under the tremendous torque as the shark thrashed against the enclosure. Ethan's wetsuit filled with crimson as the brachial artery ruptured, sending pressurized streams of blood through the water. The predator's grip tightened with each rotation, his teeth grinding against bone as he worked to separate the limb. For 45 seconds, the bull shark maintained his death grip while performing continuous barrel rolls. The violent motion stripped the flesh from Ethan's forearm in ragged chunks, exposing white bone beneath. His hand, still trapped in the predator's jaws, had turned completely pale as circulation ceased. Bone fragments and tissue floated through the water column as the shark's teeth functioned like a biological saw. The bull shark finally released its grip and disappeared into the depths, leaving behind a cloud of blood and debris. Ethan's right arm hung by mere strands of muscle and tendon below the elbow, the bone completely severed. Emergency ascent procedures began immediately as Sarah applied direct pressure to the catastrophic wound using her weight belt. Surface medical teams worked frantically during the helicopter evacuation to Suva Private Hospital. Surgeons performed emergency amputation below the elbow, removing the mangled remains of Ethan's forearm. Multiple blood transfusions were required to replace the massive volume lost during the 45-second attack. Fijian maritime authorities launched a comprehensive investigation into cage design standards and safety protocols. The incident prompted new regulations requiring reinforced barriers and mandatory safety briefings about maintaining distance from marine predators. Beka Lagoon Shark Dive suspended operations for 6 weeks, pending safety upgrades. Ethan's recovery required 18 months of reconstructive surgery and rehabilitation. His teaching career continued with a prosthetic limb, though he never returned to cage diving. It was September 22, 2016, when the crystal-clear waters surrounding Cat Island, Bahamas, shimmered under the morning Caribbean sun, their deceptive beauty masking the apex predators lurking beneath. This remote stretch of the Bahamas had earned a notorious reputation among thrill-seekers for its aggressive oceanic white-tip shark population, drawing adrenaline junkies from around the world to test their courage against nature's most efficient killers. Sophia Rossi, a 31-year-old extreme sports instructor from California, had specifically chosen this location for her friend's bachelorette party adventure. Known throughout her professional skydiving and rock climbing circles for pushing safety limits beyond reason, Sophia possessed an insatiable appetite for danger that had already resulted in numerous close calls with wildlife during her global adventures. Her 3 college friends watched nervously as she boasted about her plans to get closer to the sharks than anyone had dared before. The previous evening's heavy drinking session had left Sophia still intoxicated as their charter boat anchored above the notorious feeding grounds. Despite the captain's repeated safety warnings and her friends' growing concerns, Sophia dismissed all precautions with her characteristic reckless confidence. The shark cage diving operation had attracted multiple oceanic whitetips to the area, their distinctive white-tipped fins cutting through the water with predatory precision. Oceanic white-tip sharks rank among the ocean's most aggressive and opportunistic predators. These massive creatures, capable of reaching lengths exceeding 12 feet, possess incredibly powerful jaws, lined with razor-sharp, serrated teeth, designed to tear through flesh and bone with devastating efficiency. Unlike their more cautious reef-dwelling cousins, oceanic whitetips display bold, investigative behavior toward unfamiliar objects, often approaching potential prey with little hesitation. During the morning dive session, several oceanic whitetips circled the submerged cage, while Sophia and her friends observed from within the protective barriers. Unsatisfied with the conventional viewing experience, Sophia ignored all safety protocols and climbed onto the cage's slippery roof, declaring her intention to surf with the sharks. Her friend screamed warnings from below as she balanced precariously on the wet metal surface, arms outstretched for balance. A massive 12-foot female oceanic white-tip, attracted by the unusual movement above, approached from the depths with calculated precision. The shark's powerful tail propelled its muscular body upward as Sophia lost her footing on the treacherous cage top. She plunged directly into the water beside the ascending predator, her splash creating the exact disturbance that triggered the shark's attack response. The oceanic white tip struck with lightning speed, its massive jaws engulfing Sophia's entire midsection in a crushing bite. The shark's teeth, each measuring over an inch in length, penetrated deep into her torso, while the incredible bite force of over 4,000 pounds per square inch instantly crushed her pelvis and lower spine. Vertebrae shattered like glass under immense pressure as the shark's jaws compressed her body cavity. The predator lifted Sophia completely out of the water, her legs dangling helplessly as blood poured from the massive wounds. The shark's powerful neck muscles shook her violently from side to side, the serrated teeth sawing through muscle, organs, and bone with horrifying efficiency. Her aorta and vena cava severed completely, causing catastrophic internal bleeding that turned the surrounding water crimson. The oceanic white tip dove deep, dragging Sophia's broken body 40 feet below the surface. The combination of massive blood loss, crushed internal organs, and drowning proved instantly fatal as seawater flooded her punctured lungs. The shark continued its violent thrashing for several more seconds before releasing her lifeless form, which sank slowly toward the ocean floor as the predator circled nearby. Bahamian authorities launched an immediate investigation into the incident, though the remote location and lack of proper safety oversight complicated their efforts. Sophia's family released a brief statement requesting privacy while expressing their devastation over losing someone who lived a life without limits. The charter company faced intense scrutiny over its safety protocols and supervision of intoxicated clients. The tragedy prompted new regulations requiring mandatory sobriety checks for all cage diving participants. It was April 18, 2017. The crystal-clear waters of Tiger Beach stretched endlessly under the Caribbean sun, 25 miles off the western coast of Grand Bahama Island. This remote diving location had earned its reputation as one of the world's premier shark diving destinations, where the sandy bottom dropped to 40 feet and massive predators congregated during the cooler months. The area's unique geography created perfect hunting conditions, with shallow reefs providing abundant prey and warm currents carrying the scent of food across miles of ocean. Dr. Liam Gallagher descended into these waters with the confidence of a man who had spent 15 years studying apex predators. The 42-year-old marine biologist from Sydney University had published dozens of papers on shark behavior and feeding patterns, establishing himself as one of Australia's leading experts on large marine predators. His methodical approach to research had taken him to dangerous waters across the globe, but Tiger Beach represented the pinnacle of his career ambitions. The site's high concentration of tiger sharks during winter months offered unprecedented opportunities to collect behavioral data and tissue samples that could revolutionize the understanding of predator ecology. Gallagher had chosen this particular expedition to test new sampling equipment designed to collect genetic material without traditional baiting methods. His specialized 6-foot carbon fiber pole featured a spring-loaded collection device that could extract tissue samples through minimal contact. The research vessel anchored above had lowered a reinforced aluminum cage to the seafloor, providing what should have been complete protection, while allowing close observation of the massive predators that ruled these waters. Tiger sharks rank among the ocean's most formidable predators, reaching lengths of 18 feet and weights exceeding 2,000 pounds. These apex hunters possess serrated teeth designed to slice through turtle shells, whale blubber, and virtually any organic material they encounter. Their powerful jaws generate bite forces exceeding 6,000 pounds per square inch, while their muscular bodies can accelerate from stillness to 25 miles per hour. in seconds. Unlike many shark species, tigers show little fear of humans and possess an aggressive curiosity that makes them particularly dangerous to researchers. The 14-foot female that approached Gallagher's cage represented a perfect specimen for his research. Her scarred hide and massive girth indicated an experienced predator in her prime, exactly the type of individual whose genetic material could provide crucial insights into tiger-shark population dynamics. As she circled the cage with lazy confidence, Gallagher prepared his sampling equipment and extended the pole through the cage bars. The moment the carbon fiber rod made contact with the shark's flank, her demeanor changed instantly. The gentle circling motion exploded into violent aggression as she detected the foreign object against her skin. Her massive tail drove her forward with tremendous force, her mouth opening to reveal rows of razor-sharp teeth as she attacked the perceived threat. The pole became her target, but her momentum carried her directly into the cage structure. The impact bent the reinforced aluminum bars inward with a grinding screech of twisted metal. Gallagher's left leg, positioned near the cage wall, became trapped between the bent bars as they compressed around his shin just below the knee. The wetsuit provided no protection as the metal edges cut into his flesh, but worse was yet to come. The tiger shark's attack continued as her jaws clamped down on his trapped leg. Her serrated teeth penetrated through the neoprene wetsuit and into the soft tissue beneath, while the crushing force of her bite fractured both the tibia and fibula bones. Blood clouded the water as her teeth ground against bone, the shark's natural thrashing motion causing additional tissue damage with each movement. Gallagher reached for his diving knife with desperate precision, striking repeatedly at the shark's snout and eye area. Each blow was calculated to target the most sensitive areas, without causing permanent damage to the research specimen. After what seemed like an eternity, but lasted only seconds, the shark released her grip and disappeared into the blue water beyond. The twisted cage bars held Gallagher's mangled leg in a vice-like grip as blood continued to flow from multiple puncture wounds. The dive crew above worked frantically with cutting tools to free him from the compressed metal, while emergency medical protocols were activated aboard the research vessel. The tissue damage was extensive, with the shark's teeth having crushed muscle, severed blood vessels, and created compound fractures in both lower leg bones. Following emergency evacuation to Nassau and subsequent medical treatment in Miami, doctors determined that the extensive bone fragmentation and tissue destruction required amputation below the knee. The Bahamas Maritime Authority launched an investigation into the incident, focusing on safety protocols for scientific diving operations in shark-populated waters. Gallagher's University issued statements supporting improved safety measures for marine research, while the international scientific community debated the risks inherent in close-contact predator studies. The incident sparked renewed discussions about the balance between scientific advancement and researcher safety in extreme environments. Marine biology programs worldwide reviewed their protocols for working with large predators, implementing stricter guidelines for cage diving operations. It was November 8, 2017 in Mexico. The waters surrounding Guadalupe Island churned with an otherworldly darkness as dawn broke over the Pacific. Located 150 miles off the Baja California coast, this remote volcanic island had become a mecca for great white shark encounters during peak season. The water temperature hovered at a perfect 68 degrees, creating ideal conditions for the apex predators that migrated here annually. Kelp forests swayed in the underwater currents, while sea lions barked from rocky outcroppings, their presence attracting the very predators that made these waters legendary. Chloe Kim, a 39-year-old documentary filmmaker from London, stood on the deck of the research vessel Neptune's Eye, adjusting her diving equipment with practiced precision. Her weathered hands betrayed years of dangerous wildlife filming across 6 continents. Kim had built her reputation capturing footage that others deemed impossible, often placing herself in precarious situations for the perfect shot. Her previous documentary about polar bears had earned critical acclaim, but her latest project about African lions had flopped commercially. leaving investors demanding more sensational content. The financial pressure weighed heavily on her shoulders as she prepared for what she hoped would be her career-defining moment. The pressure to deliver had brought Kim to these shark-infested waters during the height of the great white season. Her three-person crew watched nervously as she outlined her plan to film outside the protective cage. The dive operator, Captain Rodriguez, had initially refused her request, but Kim's persistence and additional payment had eventually swayed him. She needed footage that would guarantee her documentary's success, and she believed authentic close-range shots of great whites would provide exactly that dramatic impact. The morning briefing had been tense, with crew members expressing concerns about the unprecedented risk. Great white sharks are among the ocean's most formidable predators, capable of reaching lengths exceeding 20 feet and weights of over 5,000 pounds. Their torpedo-shaped bodies can propel them through water at speeds up to 35 miles per hour. Most critically, their jaws contain up to 300 triangular serrated teeth, arranged in multiple rows, designed to tear through flesh and bone with devastating efficiency. These apex predators typically hunt seals and sea lions around Guadalupe Island, using ambush tactics that involve striking from below with tremendous force. Their bite force can exceed 4,000 psi, capable of crushing a small boat. At 10:47 a.m., Kim descended into the crystal-clear water, her handheld camera housing gleaming in the filtered sunlight. The diving cage floated nearby, her crew filming from its safety. Within minutes, a massive female great white, measuring approximately 19 feet in length, emerged from the blue depths. The shark moved with deliberate grace, circling Kim at a distance of roughly 30 feet. Its black eyes remained fixed on the filmmaker as she maneuvered to capture the perfect angle. The predator's scarred hide told stories of countless battles in these unforgiving waters. Kim positioned herself 10 feet from the cage, completely exposed to open water. The great white's circling pattern tightened with each pass, its massive pectoral fins cutting through the water with mechanical precision. Without any warning signs, the shark suddenly accelerated from below, its powerful tail driving it upward at incredible speed. The impact was catastrophic. The great white jaws clamped down on Kim's torso just below her ribcage, the upper teeth penetrating deep into her back while the lower teeth crushed her abdomen. The force of the strike launched both predator and victim above the water's surface before gravity pulled them back down. Kim's camera spiraled away into the depths as the shark's teeth punctured her liver, stomach, and several major blood vessels. The great white began its death roll, rotating its massive body with Kim still trapped in its jaws. The first rotation shattered 3 ribs on her left side. The second roll tore through her wetsuit and opened massive lacerations across her torso. The third and final rotation caused complete organ failure as the shark's serrated teeth severed her spinal cord and punctured her lungs. Blood poured from Kim's wounds, turning the surrounding water crimson. Her wetsuit filled completely with blood as the shark maintained its grip for nearly 2 minutes. The predator's powerful jaw muscles continued to compress, causing additional internal damage with each passing second. Finally, the great white released its grip, allowing Kim's lifeless body to float motionless in the bloodied water. The dive team recovered Kim's body within minutes, but the massive blood loss and catastrophic organ damage had already proven fatal. Her torso bore the unmistakable pattern of great white teeth marks, with wounds measuring over 18 inches across. Mexican authorities launched an immediate investigation into the incident, focusing on the dive operator's decision to allow cage-free diving during peak shark season. Kim's family released a brief statement expressing their grief while acknowledging her lifelong passion for wildlife filmmaking. The footage from her final dive was never released to the public. Environmental groups used the tragedy to highlight the dangers of exploiting wildlife for entertainment purposes. The waters around Guadalupe Island continue to attract thrill seekers and researchers, but Kim's death serves as a stark reminder of the ocean's unforgiving nature. Her story joins a growing list of encounters where human ambition met nature's raw power with devastating consequences. October 3, 2018 brought crystal-clear conditions to the waters surrounding Isla Guadalupe, Mexico. The remote island, located 150 miles off the Baja California coast, offered some of the clearest water and most predictable great white shark encounters on the planet. Visibility extended over 150 feet in the deep blue water, and the water temperature held steady at 70 degrees Fahrenheit. David Chen, 33, had been looking forward to this night shoot for months, knowing that documenting nocturnal great white behavior could revolutionize understanding of these apex predators. David was an award-winning underwater cinematographer whose work had appeared in National Geographic documentaries and major motion pictures. His passion for shark behavior had led him to specialize in great white footage, and he had spent 5 years filming at Guadalupe Island without incident. He had thousands of hours of great white footage and worked exclusively with the most established and safety-conscious operators in the business. Isla Guadalupe had become the premier destination for great white shark encounters due to its unique geography and marine ecosystem. This topography, combined with abundant seal colonies and nutrient-rich currents, creates perfect conditions for great white sharks. Waters around Guadalupe host one of the largest concentrations of great whites in the world. The great white sharks of Guadalupe are among the largest and most impressive specimens of their species. At 8:30 p.m., David was filming from a specially designed night cage, part of a National Geographic project documenting nocturnal great white behavior that had never been captured on film before. The cage was constructed of reinforced aluminum bars with emergency release mechanisms designed to prevent entrapment if the structure became damaged. David was using cutting-edge equipment, including a new high-intensity LED array that produced 12,000 lumens, significantly brighter than any underwater lighting system previously used for shark filming. Great white sharks are primarily visual hunters that rely heavily on their eyesight to locate and attack prey. What David didn't anticipate was how the intense artificial lighting would affect a massive 17-foot male great white that had been hunting in the area. Great whites have evolved to hunt in specific light conditions, and the powerful LED array began to disorient and agitate the already territorial predator. The artificial lighting disrupted the shark's natural hunting behavior, creating confusion and stress that manifested as increasingly aggressive behavior. The 17-foot male great white, weighing approximately 3,800 pounds, had been patrolling the waters around Guadalupe for several days. This was a mature, experienced predator that had successfully hunted in these waters for years. Male great whites of this size are incredibly territorial and aggressive, especially when their normal behavior patterns are disrupted. Great white sharks possess a complex nervous system that processes visual information with remarkable efficiency. Their brains are specifically adapted to interpret the subtle light patterns and shadows that indicate the presence of prey. When exposed to artificial lighting of extreme intensity, their visual processing system can become overwhelmed, leading to disorientation and aggressive behavior. The shark started exhibiting increasingly erratic behavior, repeatedly ramming the cage with tremendous force. Each impact sent shockwaves through the water and caused the entire cage structure to shake violently. The aluminum bars, designed to withstand the force of a great white attack, began to show stress fractures under the repeated impacts. David continued filming, believing that the cage would protect him from the agitated predator. Great white sharks can generate incredible force when attacking. Their torpedo-shaped bodies, powered by massive tail muscles, can accelerate from 0 to 25 miles per hour in seconds. Shark's behavior became increasingly frenzied as the bright lights continued to disorient its visual system. What should have been a controlled observation session was rapidly deteriorating into a dangerous confrontation between human technology and one of nature's most perfect predators. When David tried to adjust his lighting setup to reduce the shark's agitation, He accidentally triggered the cage's emergency release mechanism, a safety feature designed to prevent entrapment if the cage became damaged during an attack. The top section of the cage opened, creating a 3-foot gap that the massive shark immediately exploited. Great whites are incredibly intelligent predators with excellent spatial awareness. The shark recognized the opening instantly and adjusted its attack pattern to take advantage of the breach in David's defenses. The agitated great white, drawn by the intense lights and David's movements, attacked through the opening with explosive force. This 17-foot individual was already in an excited, aggressive state, and its attack carried the full force of millions of years of evolutionary refinement. The shark's massive jaws, measuring over 18 inches across, clamped down on David's torso with devastating force. The 300 triangular, serrated teeth sliced through his diving equipment and deep into his chest and shoulders. The bite force of 1,800 psi crushed ribs and punctured vital organs, while the shark's brief thrashing motion caused additional trauma as it attempted to drag its prey from the compromised cage. The attack lasted only seconds, but the damage was catastrophic. David's underwater camera continued recording throughout the encounter, capturing footage that would later be used to analyze the incident and improve safety protocols. The images showed the incredible power and speed of a great white attack, as well as the devastating effectiveness of their primary weapon. The boat crew immediately cut all lights and activated emergency protocols, and the sudden darkness seemed to calm the shark, which released its grip and disappeared into the depths as quickly as it had appeared. But the damage was done. David had sustained catastrophic injuries to his cardiovascular and respiratory systems. He was recovered within 90 seconds, a remarkably fast response time that demonstrated the professionalism of the dive crew. But the great white's attack had severed major arteries and crushed vital organs. Despite immediate first aid and emergency medical procedures, David was bleeding internally at a rate that made survival impossible. David died from blood loss and shock before the support vessel could reach the mainland, his final moments captured on the very cameras he had used to document the ocean's apex predators. The footage he had been recording became evidence in the investigation that followed, providing unprecedented insight into great white behavior under artificial lighting conditions. This tragic incident led to new protocols limiting light intensity for all-night filming operations with great whites and requiring backup safety systems for cage diving operations. The investigation revealed that high-intensity artificial lighting could trigger aggressive behavior in great whites, transforming controlled observation sessions into deadly encounters. September 14, 2018 brought perfect conditions to the Neptune Islands off South Australia. Crystal clear water, calm seas, and the kind of visibility that made cage diving operators smile with anticipation. The Southern Ocean stretched endlessly in every direction, its deep blue surface hiding one of the world's most concentrated populations of great white sharks. For tourists seeking the ultimate adrenaline rush, there was no better place on Earth to come face to face with the ocean's apex predator. Jennifer Park, 31, was living out her bucket list dreams during a solo vacation to Australia. A successful marketing executive from Los Angeles, Jennifer had worked tirelessly for years to afford this once-in-a-lifetime trip, and cage diving with great whites represented the pinnacle of adventure tourism for her. She was a certified scuba diver with 30 logged dives, mostly in the tropical waters of the Caribbean and Hawaii, but she had never encountered anything more dangerous than a reef shark. Jennifer had spent the previous evening at the dive operator's briefing session, watching videos of previous cage diving expeditions and learning about great white behavior. She'd been fascinated by the footage of massive sharks gliding past the protective cages, their powerful forms moving with surprising grace through the water. The dive operator had emphasized safety protocols repeatedly, but Jennifer was focused more on the excitement than the warnings. The cage diving operation was professional and safety-focused, with multiple backup backup systems, and experienced dive masters. Jennifer had undergone thorough safety briefings and was equipped with proper emergency signaling devices. The cage itself was a robust steel structure designed to keep tourists safe while allowing close observation of great whites with multiple exit points and constant surface support. At 11:45 a.m., during what had started as a routine cage diving session, the ocean around the Neptune Islands suddenly became a theater of primal power. A massive 16-foot great white shark, larger than any the crew had seen that season, approached the cage with the confident curiosity typical of dominant predators. The shark began displaying classic investigative behavior, circling the cage and occasionally bumping it with its snout, normal behavior that tourists paid thousands of dollars to witness. Great white sharks are naturally curious predators that investigate unfamiliar objects in their territory through physical contact, using their snouts and mouths to gather information about potential threats or prey. They have no hands to explore with, so they use their most sensitive organ, their mouth, to investigate. This behavior, while appearing aggressive to humans, is simply how great whites explore their environment and determine whether something poses a threat or opportunity. Their investigative nature has been documented countless times, with most encounters ending peacefully once the shark determines the object is neither food nor threat. Jennifer, initially thrilled by the close encounter, began to feel overwhelmed as the massive predator continued its investigation. The shark's size and proximity were far more intense than anything she had experienced in her previous diving adventures. When the great white made a particularly close pass, bumping the cage more forcefully than before, Jennifer made a critical error in judgment that would change everything. The shark's massive eye, black and emotionless, seemed to stare directly at Jennifer through the cage bars, creating a primal fear response that overrode her training. Her heart rate spiked, and she began hyperventilating through her regulator, a dangerous condition that could lead to panic and poor decision-making underwater. Instead of remaining calm and following the safety protocols that required staying inside the cage at all times, Jennifer panicked and attempted to signal for immediate surface evacuation. In her anxiety, she moved too quickly toward the top of the cage, inadvertently positioning herself near the cage opening just as the great white made another investigative pass. The dive master immediately recognized the dangerous situation and moved to guide Jennifer back to the center of the cage. The shark, responding to Jennifer's sudden movement and her position near the cage opening, made contact with her arm as she reached upward. The bite was investigative rather than predatory, a single, powerful clamp that immediately released when the shark determined she wasn't prey. However, the damage from even an investigative bite from a 16-foot great white was severe, the serrated teeth leaving deep lacerations that required immediate medical attention. The dive master inside the cage immediately activated emergency protocols, applying direct pressure to Jennifer's wounded arm while signaling for immediate surface evacuation. The great white, having completed its investigation and determining that the cage and its occupants posed no threat or food opportunity, departed the area following typical post-contact behavior. The entire incident lasted less than 30 seconds, but those moments would be etched in Jennifer's memory forever. Surface support crew had Jennifer out of the water within 90 seconds of the incident, their emergency response training proving invaluable in the critical first minutes. The boat's medical officer, specifically trained in shark bite trauma and equipped with advanced first aid supplies, immediately stabilized Jennifer's arm and controlled the bleeding while the captain radioed for emergency medical evacuation. Emergency medical response was immediate and professional. Jennifer was airlifted to Adelaide's trauma center, where surgeons worked to repair the damage to her arm and shoulder. The medical team's quick response and Jennifer's overall good health contributed significantly to her positive outcome. Jennifer survived the encounter, but required multiple reconstructive surgeries and months of physical therapy. She eventually regained most of the function in her arm, though she never returned to diving. Her experience led to enhanced safety protocols for cage diving operations, including mandatory panic management training and improved cage designs that minimized the possibility of tourist shark contact. July 3rd, 2015, brought optimal conditions to the Neptune Islands off South Australia. The Southern Ocean was crystal clear, with visibility extending over 100 feet into the depths. Perfect for underwater photography. Dr. Serafina Blackwood, 31, was a professional underwater photographer and marine biologist who had been working at Neptune Islands for 3 weeks on a sanctioned research project documenting great white behavior. Serafina had been diving with great whites for years, always from the safety of protective cages, always following protocol to the letter. Her work was destined for publication, and she had been capturing extraordinary footage of these apex predators in their natural habitat. The Neptune Islands were considered one of the premier locations in the world for great white research. The remote archipelago, located 35 miles south of Port Lincoln, served as a natural aggregation site for great whites hunting the abundant fur seal colonies. The crystal-clear waters and predictable shark behavior made it an ideal location for scientific study, but also one of the most dangerous places on Earth to encounter these predators outside of protective barriers. Serafina's research project was groundbreaking in its scope. She was documenting feeding behaviors, social interactions, and territorial patterns that had never been captured on film before. Her underwater photography skills were legendary in the marine biology community, and her images had already contributed to several major scientific publications. The equipment she used was state-of-the-art, worth more than most people's cars, and absolutely essential to her career. The research station at Neptune Islands operated under strict safety protocols developed over decades of shark research. Every dive was carefully planned, with multiple safety divers, emergency equipment, and constant communication with the surface. That morning, several large great whites had been circling the research area, drawn by the carefully controlled bait that researchers use to attract them for study. The sharks were displaying typical investigative behavior, approaching the cages with curiosity rather than aggression. It was exactly the kind of behavior Serafina needed to document, and she had been getting some of the best footage of her career. At 5:45 a.m., during optimal morning light conditions, Serafina was completing her final shots from inside the protective cage when disaster struck in the form of equipment failure. Her camera's power cable became severely tangled in the cage door's hinge mechanism as she maneuvered for the perfect shot. As she tried to free the cable, it only pulled tighter, preventing the cage door from closing properly. Her safety diver was inside the boat reviewing footage when Serafina made the fateful decision that would cost her life. Rather than signal for help and risk losing the camera system, she decided to quickly surface and untangle the cable herself. It seemed like a simple solution. She was an expert swimmer, the surface was only 15 feet away, and she would be back in the cage within seconds. What Serafina didn't account for was the behavior of the 15-foot male great white that had been circling the cage for several minutes. Great whites are naturally curious creatures, and cage diving operations often heighten their investigative behavior. When they see cage activity, they frequently enter what marine biologists call investigation mode, a heightened state of alertness where they're more likely to approach and test potential items with their mouths. This behavior makes them particularly dangerous to anyone outside the protective barriers. She surfaced 15 yards from the cage boat, struggling with the tangled cable just as the massive predator was approaching to investigate. The shark, already in an investigative state due to the cage activity, immediately identified her as something worth examining more closely. In the predator's mind, anything moving at the surface during feeding time was potential prey that needed to be tested. The attack was swift and devastating. The great white's powerful jaws, capable of exerting over 4,000 pounds of pressure per square inch, clamped down on Serafina's torso in its initial strike. Her safety diver heard her screams echoing across the water and dove in immediately, but the damage was already catastrophic. The shark had grabbed her chest and abdomen, its serrated teeth designed by millions of years of evolution to tear through flesh and bone with surgical precision. The boat crew threw flotation devices and initiated emergency procedures, reaching Serafina within 90 seconds. The expedition's marine medic immediately began first aid, working frantically to control the massive bleeding from her torso. However, she had sustained massive chest and abdominal injuries from the shark's powerful bite, with internal organs damaged beyond repair. Despite their best efforts and immediate medical attention, Serafina died from trauma and blood loss during the helicopter evacuation to Adelaide, 35 minutes after the attack. The investigation revealed that equipment failure had created the perfect storm of circumstances. An experienced professional forced to make a split-second decision that placed her in harm's way at the worst possible moment. Thanks for watching. Want to watch more? Click on your screen now.